Welcome to the PVN College podcast, where our goal is to grow students in the love and knowledge of Jesus Christ. In today's episode, we're going to talk about God's design for dating in college. Our guests today are Brooke Dellis and Jacob Brunner. Jacob, did I get that right?
Yep.
Okay, nailed it. Good. A little bit about you guys. Brooke and Jacob are both, this is actually the easiest time I've had to do this. Brooke and Jacob are both sophomores at the University of Georgia. Go Dogs.
Go Dogs.
And both majoring in Management Information Systems. Is that right?
Yes.
Is that what that is?
Perfect.
Okay, perfect. So, guys, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having us.
Yes.
Excited to be here.
Good. I was about to say, does it feel, is there a rush? Is it an honor? Is there like an aura, or is it just kind of a normal thing?
I think for me, it's kind of normal because I know you, and so
That's true.
for me, it's kind of like
Not
we
a
get
big
to
deal.
chat and it's fun.
Right. But Jacob,
There's a rush. It's exhilarating, right? Drove across the state to a city I don't really know that well.
Yes,
In this
yes.
strange room with these strange people.
I know.
So-
It's not that strange
No,
for
I
those
mean,
who are
re-
listening.
relatively.
We've
It's
been
very,
dating for a year and a half. I thought, I hope I'm not straight.
Relatively.
yeah.
Like
That's
as a
right.
podcast listener, it's like, whoa.
Yeah.
So-
There are some bright lights in here. I'll give you that.
Yeah.
I'll give you that. So now, I did want to mention that. So today, like Brooke said a little bit, today we are, see, Brooke, just a natural, just nail it. Today we are talking about dating in college and what that looks like.
That's scary.
And you, and you guys have been dating, and now Brooke, you just said this a little bit. You guys have been dating for how long?
A year and a half, like a tiny bit over a year and a half.
A year and a half.
much.
Is there an anniversary? Like, do you guys do the anniversary thing? Is it a year and a half? So when did you guys start dating?
October 1st.
October 1st.
So,
Of 19?
2019.
Of 2019.
yeah,
Okay.
not
okay.
1999. No.
Yeah, that would be a long time. That would be a long time.
True.
So now, okay, here's the other question. So Jacob, let's start with you, man. How did you guys meet? How does that
So-
happen?
Great question. And I know people who date in college, and it's funny because it's always interesting to see how they meet. We actually met in the first class of college at 8 a.m. English
Oh
on the
my
first day,
gosh.
first semester of freshman year. So,
Wow. Do you guys remember the first thing you said to each other? Or wait, so did you meet the first day of that class? Or just in that class throughout the semester
think-
kind of thing?
I definitely noticed you, but I think the first time we
Nice.
talked was the second time we went to that class, which was the first Friday.
Okay.
Ever.
Got it?
And I remember I heard the name of a mutual friend. He's actually from Rome, but I was like, I turned around and I'm like, do you mean this guy? And it was a girl. I thought she was cute talking to this guy, and they're like, yeah, how do you know him? And then,
And that was her.
yeah.
Whoa. So let's talk for a second. So, some people say that miracles don't happen anymore, that the Lord doesn't perform miracles. The fact that this has happened in 8 a.m. English,
Yeah.
that's pretty profound.
Yeah.
That's pretty Old Testament for me.
Well, and it gets even crazier because when you look at like AP scores and stuff, it means we both had to fail or not get the credit for AP language or AP literature.
Yeah.
So we both didn't get a 5, didn't get the credit, and had to take English 1102 in college. So
that actually is pretty
Yeah.
cool. That's pretty cool to think
It
about.
was like a 20-person class, if that.
So
Yeah.
at least starting junior year,
Okay. Brooke, is that how you remember the kind of the first encounter with Jacob?
Yeah, I remember we talked, briefly because of the mutual friend.
Yes.
And it kind of started because I saw him in a dining hall.
This is before the English class, or while that's going on?
No, while that's going
Okay,
on.
got
We
it.
talked the first time. I see him in a dining hall, and I was like, hey, Jacob, right before our 8 a.m. So it was early, and I said, hey, Jacob, and he goes, how do I know you?
Oh.
And I was like, we talked about, you remember the mutual friend, we talked about
So
this.
it wasn't like an aggressive how do I know you? It was like I know you. I'm just trying to
I was
place
panicking
it.
because I was like, oh my gosh, she's talking to me. I'm like, what is? I've met so many people at this point.
Yes.
I'm like going through all the names in my head.
Oh, okay, got you.
So then that kind of kick-started when we he was like, oh, how do I know you? Or where do I know you from? And I was like, oh, we have English together.
Yes.
It's okay. And so then pretty much from then on out, we would kind of like we would walk to class together from like breakfast, because we would eat breakfast with that mutual friend that we both knew. So we'd all
Nice.
eat together and then go to class.
Shout out to the mutual friend, the bridge builder.
Yeah.
That's impressive. That's impressive.
An essential detail I think Brooke forgot is that when she said hi to me in the dining hall, I was like panicking because she said hi, Jacob.
Oh,
So she
yeah.
knew my
So
name.
it's on. Yeah, here we go.
So, this is a quick story.
Yeah.
But I was thinking, I'm like, I don't know. I'm blanking. So it just so happened that 3 people in this 20-person class were named Hayden. So I said, hey, Hayden. No, I didn't know what her name was, but I knew she wasn't Hayden. And she's like, that's not my name.
So you
Like,
tried to play the
I'm
odds,
Brooke.
kind of?
Yeah, and so then I thought it would be funny. I'm like, well, statistically speaking, Hayden was my best shot, right?
Yeah.
So it's like funny, a little bit witty.
I love it.
She wasn't amused.
Oh.
I was like, okay. Bye now. I'll see you in class.
See you in class. Yeah.
Oh, man. Dude, so good. Well, I appreciated it. I
Thank
like a little, nothing wrong with a little statistical
Validation.
humor.
Right.
At 8 before an 8 a.m.
I thought it was pretty good for like off the top of the head.
Yes, agreed. 100%. 100%. Well, it seems to have worked out.
Yeah, so far.
Okay, so that kind of, now that we've got that introduced, we are talking about dating in college, kind of maybe the good, the bad, and maybe what to watch out for, right? Some best practices maybe. And I think a good reason is that a lot of people will meet their future spouse in college, or at least while they're college age. So that's good. That's a good reason to talk about dating. But then a bad reason, I think, is that a lot of college relationships, as I'm sure you guys can testify to, a lot of college relationships can turn toxic pretty quickly, right? There's no, and I don't mean just that in like a purity culture kind of thing, although that's there as well, but just like there is no supervision. It's just you and your friends. Like, and I don't just mean supervision like someone watching out. I mean like there's no one that you can be accountable to. There's no standard. Like it's just you, and we're about to find out how grounded you are. And that's an easy way to stumble, right? So I think this is something that's helpful. So we talked a little bit about relationships that are toxic. And so just, as we think through this, what are some ways that you guys have seen college relationships become toxic? So maybe, and obviously we won't use names, right? But at the same time, like just some ways that maybe like you've seen, and this can be autobiographical if it needs to be, but just like ways that you've seen, like, man, if I was talking to a high schooler or a student in college who was about to start dating, here's some things like, hey, watch out for this. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So, Brooke, let's start with you and we'll swing it around to Jacob.
I would say I've seen a lot of friends enter in relationships and then I never see them again.
Oh, yes.
And their like relationship with whoever is almost like at the expense of other friendships. And that's where I think it's very toxic because they lose that community, and their community is now like whoever they're dating. And whoever they're dating is like their accountability partner and their whole entire world, their friend, their best friend, like they're everything. So I've seen where people will start dating and I never see them again. And then I've seen where they've broken up and it's horrible.
Yeah.
They're devastated. Like their whole world has just like crumbled because that's all they had. And so that's kind of where I've seen it in friends who have disappeared and lost community and kind of turned away from that because they've only wanted to be and spend time with their like significant other.
So I think to your point, Brooke, we talk about how a lot of times in the church, well, there's no such thing as idols anymore, right? Like those were made out of statues or whatever. Like, but idolatry is still exists, right? It's a human problem, and that is what it sounds like to me. Like it's so easy to make an idol out of your significant other, right? Like gods can require us to sacrifice friendships and sacrifice all these other things. Like we are sacrificing so many things for this false god, which I know sounds so like high churchy, but that really is what it is.
Yeah.
Like it really is like I don't know. Were you gonna follow up a little bit?
Yeah, I was gonna say too, like I've another thing that like you wouldn't think is toxic, but I've kind of like someone said this was like, if your dating life is representing a marriage, then that's toxic because you're not married to them yet. So the person you're dating, you should not have like a marriage relationship with them because you're not married yet. They don't, like, you're not one yet.
Yeah.
And so, like, yes, you should hopefully in pursuit of marriage, but you're not married yet, and there's no like real, like, there's no dependency yet until you're married. So I think it's very toxic to have like marital like relationship with someone you're dating.
Yeah.
And that's where I learned, and I was like, whoa.
Yeah.
Like I've never heard that, because I always thought it was like, oh, a good thing to date for marriage, but not date like you're married.
When is your book coming out, Brooke? I'm pretty psyched for that. So here's kind of our first like official Q&A, but like, so Jacob, let's swing back to you.
Sure.
And then we'll go over to Brooke. How do you balance time between, again, we're waiting on the book on this, right? But how do you balance time between dating and hanging out with friends?
Yeah.
How do you do that?
I'd say with a lot of practice. So I consider myself a pretty busy guy, especially in college. I work a job. I'm taking a full course load. I'm dating a girl, and I have friends too. So it's like, and I also serve in like 2 different ministries. So there's a lot of stuff like that that happens.
Yeah.
So this year, especially moving off campus, I live in a house with 4 other guys. So super fun, but it's a learning process. So I think one big thing that's been really important is that Brooke and I don't there are days when we won't see each other, which I know seems like a little thing, but in college it's more influential than I thought it would be, because there are days when we'll both like spend time apart, and it's good because we're investing in others and we're pursuing like other relationships. So one of the big things is surrounding yourself and investing in community that's not your like significant other.
Like a different, I don't know, like a different, doing something that your significant other doesn't do. Is that what you're saying?
Yes and no.
Can you, like, examples?
So it doesn't have to be. But for instance, I serve in a ministry where I lead a small group.
Okay.
And so this also kind of goes to my roommates, but I lead with a co-leader. He's not one of my roommates. Like, he's a new friend that I've made this year. Great guy. I love him. And then we disciple, essentially, this group of freshman guys. And so it's awesome because there's multiple times each week where I'll spend time with just them. So it's almost accountability of sorts, because it just makes sure that like I'm not putting all my eggs in one basket in an unhealthy way, but like like getting out there. So I also believe that to be like a member of the church, or to be, that's not the right word, to be a part of the body, you should be both poured into and be pouring into, pouring out. And so that's one of my ways that like I pour out. Gotcha. And that's awesome because it's accountability with both my co-leader, but then with those guys too.
So taking jobs or taking opportunities to work with some people who are not your significant other, it's not a bad thing.
Not at all.
Right?
And it's resulted in so many friendships that like are now like very, very dear to me. And some friends that I think will be lifelong friends. And that wouldn't have happened if I was like scared to branch out after freshman year. Or scared to meet people that I wasn't interested in dating.
Like health is the word that just keeps coming to me. Like a well-rounded, this is a dumb example, but like a well-rounded diet. Like your soul needs that too. Like you can't just feed off of, other than God, right? You can't just feed off of one thing all the time, right? In terms of your soul, like you need more people. Brooke, same question, kind of your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I would say the same thing. It does get kind of difficult because we have the same major, we have the same classes, so it's hard to differentiate, like when we're doing homework together and then like spending quality time together. So that's kind of like, I think, a tricky thing that we have to like differentiate. But I do agree with Jacob where we're kind of like pouring out in different places and like have different communities, because like with he's a small group leader and then I'm on the prayer team, so we do like completely separate things with separate people, and then like we're involved in some of the same things, but also we're involved in very different things. And we'll hang out with different people, and it's that communication of like we will schedule time to hang out, but also we'll schedule time where I'm like, oh, I'm doing this with some of my friends. And so it's just like communicating and like figuring out the balance, especially like in the week of when we're planning to have quality time together, and then planning where we're gonna be hanging out with other people as well.
Yeah.
So it's just we kind of plan out our quality time, if that makes sense.
I'd say like schedule it.
Schedule
so
it.
like we can make sure there's like a balance.
Yeah.
Like a healthy
Yeah.
balance.
Right.
Of,
You have to be proactive, it
Exactly.
sounds like. You can't just be passive. Like, it's not going to
Yeah.
ever work if you just are, there has to be intentionality.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
and so that
going
it
on.
goes kind of back to what you said. Like in college, there's no real oversight. Like if you're not spending, or if you're spending like too much time with a significant other, it's like hopefully you have like people that'll hold you accountable to that. But otherwise, there's no like hand in the sky that's gonna say like, no, you need to be doing this.
Right.
So,
No, exactly. So the two other things that I just want to add, like, and that I get from you guys too, like, to couples who are listening, like, you know, take heart, because this is hard. Like this, it's messy,
very
and like
hard.
you said, Jacob, like it just takes time. Like
Yeah.
you're gonna make mistakes and
course.
overcommit and undercommit, and like you don't have to get it right out of the gate. Like
Yeah.
that's okay. And then also, like, I think some of it also has to do with who you are before you get into college, like how much has been built into you before you get to school, because you know, once you get to college, it really brings out what else is going on.
yeah.
So as you have responsibility and Christ-likeness instilled in you before you get to school, that will serve you well, like once you get into college. Okay, so which kind of leads sort of into the next thing, man, just a natural. So Brooke, let's go around to you. What role does Jesus play in your relationship?
Yeah.
What I don't know. That's kind of a
Yeah.
upper question, but what does that look like?
I kind of want to start like when we first, like, Jacob asked me to be his girlfriend or date.
Yeah.
He pulled out single, dating, engaged, married.
Oh, Ben Stewart. Yeah, very
He pulled
nice.
out the book, and he had like things highlighted in it that he thought were important for our relationship.
Yeah.
So from the beginning, he kind of took the lead on this when he kind of like talked about like expectations and made sure we were on the same page of what we were looking for. Like we both we talked about how we both were dating with the intent of marriage.
Yeah.
And like we weren't, like, not to put too much pressure on it, but we're not dating just to have fun.
Right.
Like we want and we see like long term in this, and then we set boundaries. And once we started, like, as that night we made like boundaries that were Christ centered, and we've kind of like laid the foundation there of like expectations.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'd say that was like the first thing, and then we check up on each other a lot and just talk about what God is doing in our lives, and like I'll ask him like, oh, how's your small group? Like, what did you learn? Like, what did y'all talk about? And then he'll ask me about prayer. What did you learn? What did you talk about? And or after sermons or after church, we'll kind of like talk about like what we learned and how it affected us and like why it affected us.
Shout out to Cleveland.
Shout out to Cleveland Road. But yeah, we talk about it a lot, which leads to like greater conversations of like, how are we doing? Like, what's God doing in our lives right now? Like, where are we at right now spiritually?
Yeah.
And so, yeah.
No, that's fantastic. I'll kind of share my 2 cents in a minute, but Jacob, kind of the same question.
Yeah. So, upper level question. I agree with basically everything Brooke said.
Yeah.
From the start, I just wanted to make sure, like, I recognize that she's pretty special, and I was like, man, I got to make sure I don't mess this up. So,
Sure.
went to someone who was smarter than me.
Nice.
Pulled some stuff from there. So that was definitely a priority for me, was just making sure that, like, this relationship was Jesus-centered, or at least I'd try, right?
Yeah, right. No, it's good.
So, yeah, checking up on each other, I think, is huge. And then I think another super important thing is spiritual community. And outside of your significant other. And that's, I think, another common theme.
Yeah.
But college is a time for like meeting people, but it's also a time for change. And so kind of using that phrase, eggs in one basket again, it's like one huge thing for me is like not only having Brooke as a like person that I can talk to, like a spiritual friend, advisor, but also having like other people, like one of my, some of my roommates I'm really, really close with, so they can like check up on me. I have a discipler, like someone who pours into me, and I have people that I pour into. And I think having that community along with your significant other is so big. Because there are things that like they can keep you accountable for that, you know, may not be super healthy if your significant other keeps you accountable for that kind of stuff.
I think you've hit on something really important, Jacob, because so often we focus on just the relationship. If I don't focus on the relationship will turn sour. But what's happening is you're becoming less and less well-rounded because you don't have you're just focusing on your significant other, which is actually damaging the relationship.
Yes.
The more it's almost like the more you focus on being well-rounded, that doesn't hurt the relationship. It actually helps the relationship.
Exactly.
And I think that's what people miss is I've got to focus on the relationship number one all the time, or it'll
slip away.
Yeah, it'll crumple right in front of me. But what you're actually doing, that's what you're actually causing it to crumple because you're putting too much weight.
Yep.
Does that make sense? Does that make sense? Great points, guys. And then the other thing I wanted to say too, Jacob, one of the things I thought was so cool about what Brooke said that you did is that you set the tone early.
Yeah.
Right? You set the tone early. And then the other thing that I kind of caught here is, Jacob, you made all these good decisions about what to do before you started dating. So like the work you do like people think that like singleness has nothing to offer. It's not important. Once I start dating, here's where everything will turn, right? But what you do as a single person, the work you put in, that's what influences the relationship. I saw a lot of head nodding. Yeah, what do you think? Yeah.
So shout out to Ben Stewart, Single Dating, Engaged, Married. Fantastic book. One of the biggest. I actually didn't read the Engaged and Married sections because I was like,
Makes
don't worry
sense.
about that later. I was really interested in the single and more so in the dating. But one of the biggest things I learned from the single section was that singleness is a gift. And it truly is. And I think that's just a mindset people have is that like when I'm single, I'm incomplete. And that is so wrong.
Right.
And that is,
No, I agree with you. Like once I get into the relationship, now life can really begin. And that is just, it is so detrimental. And it's easy for us to sit here and be like, well, gosh, it's so, come on, guys. And I remember when I was single, the thing I hated was getting advice from people who weren't single, which is also another thing I think that single people, like we have, like there has to be a community aspect, right? Like single, I think this has been Stewart too, single and alone are not the same thing.
Yes.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Like, and that's what our culture pushes is that single means alone. And it's just not true. So, okay, last thing, as we get into this last question, so Brooke, we'll loop it back to you. What should these segues are just making themselves today. This is phenomenal. What should single college students look for in potential relationships? Like, all right, the physical attraction. Well, we can even talk about physical attraction, but like, so the attraction is there. What are some other things maybe to look out for, or do we do stuff before physical attraction? What do you think?
I think it's a lot of like spending time with that person, but not necessarily one-on-one per se. But knowing who they are. Like Jacob and I, before we started dating, we had actually like a lot of the same friends. So we hung out in groups a lot and a good bit. And that's how we got to know each other is in like a group setting. And I got to truly see or learn more about him in a group setting and see his other relationships with people as well.
Yeah.
Because I think relationships with other people that someone has is a huge indicator of how your relationship with that person may be in the future. So I think definitely look at their relationships and who they surround themselves with as well. And another thing is if you like spending time with them. Like if Ben Stewart, I was reading, he was saying like if you don't like spending time with them, like, why would you date them for marriage because you're gonna be married to them
right.
forever.
It's a
like,
lot
if
of
you
time.
don't like spending time with them, then you know. And I think that was a huge thing is that I enjoyed spending time with him, and then I saw how he interacted with his friends and his relationship with his family and his friends as I learned about him. And I thought that was a huge indicator of his character as I saw his relationship with others too.
No, that makes perfect sense. Jacob, kind of same question, man.
Yeah, so I think a big thing for single college students looking to date is take your time. I know college feels crazy and fast, and it feels like every day is an adventure sometimes, but I think that whole, and then summer feels like the end of the world, right? So I think that whole like energy of college kind of leads people to, especially like earlier in college, it leads to them like kind of rushing into relationships. But I mean, I'd say just take your time. Like that was a big thing that Brooke and I did. We before we actually started dating, we both knew we liked each other because I confronted her about it. But I was like, the reality is like, I don't really know you.
Sure.
This is like a month after we met, and it's like, I mean, yeah, I think you're a great person. I think you're cute. But like,
right.
Who are you? So
Sure.
I think something else that was huge for us early on was we took, it felt like a long time, but it was like a month and a half.
Yeah.
It felt like years. Just like hanging out, like being friends with like boundaries, right? So it's not, it wasn't an unhealthy, like isolating thing, and it wasn't this like in between. What is that called? It wasn't
Talking.
Yeah, it wasn't like fake dating, right?
Yeah, no,
so
I
it wasn't
get it.
like dating with all the benefits but another commitment. It was like I really do want to like get to know you to make sure we don't rush into this.
Yeah.
He called it exclusive friends.
Yes,
It was like,
I remember that.
He told me, he was like, hey, I really like you. I want to get to know you. I'm not ready to date you. I just want to get to know you. And he said, I'm not looking to like talk or date anyone else. Like, I'm interested in you, but let's be friends.
Yeah.
But we had that understanding of, there was no doubt of, oh, who is he talking to, another girl? Like, I don't know what we are. We set the tone that we were just going to stay friends. And if we felt led to date, and when we got to that point and God was calling us to that, then we would. But it was like no pressure, just getting to know each other and having an interest with each other without having doubts of, is there another person? Like, what are we doing? He really like made it very clear in the beginning, and there is no like pressure, and there is no like
obligation.
No, and we didn't really hang out much one-on-one either during that time. Like, it wasn't fake dating. It was just getting to know each other and just having deep, intentional, like, conversations.
Yeah. Well, so to me, like, I can hear couples or singles listening, and it's like, date with marriage in mind. Well, what does that even mean? Okay, that's a concrete example of how to do that, right? Like, marriage involves getting to know the other person on a very deep level, right? Well, you can do that. That's a healthy way of dating towards marriage, is before you're dating, right? Is to not put all the stock in dating, but to put all the stock in the other person, and to get to know them on a deeper level than just you're physically attractive and you're funny. Okay, let's do this thing. Like that will not sustain a marriage.
Yeah.
Getting to know the person in depth, like that's where that comes in. Phenomenal, guys. Such good advice. I think we've already got one. We like to do like a further resources section. Any like books or podcasts or articles that you guys would recommend in terms of dating and relationships?
Single, dating, engaged, married.
Yes.
That was really good.
By Ben Stewart, right? Yep, by Ben Stewart.
Yeah.
Cool.
And I think another underlooked resource or overlooked resource actually is like married couples that are like servants of Christ, like people in the church that are married. So I know it's kind of a weird thing, but the church we go to in Athens, like the pastor openly has like people over to like see what his life is like being married with kids, and he thinks that's huge because it shows you like especially outside the context of your own family.
Yeah.
If you have parents that are together, it's like seeing what that looks like can be so, I think, like goal setting and like can like get you thinking in the right way.
Yeah.
So I think that's a huge resource too, especially if they're on the younger side.
Yeah, those kids,
Yeah.
Well, and I agree. I think in any vocation, in any kind of relation, in any situation where you're trying to learn, you learn so much more from watching people
Yes.
do it in the moment than any book or blog can teach you. And that's not a knock on books or blogs. Like, those are super important, as we've shown, but they're not designed to do what life on life teaching can do. Guys, this was phenomenal. This was so helpful. Thanks for being with us today.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks for having us.
This is awesome.
For more information on this topic, message us on Instagram at PVN College. Listen to the PVN College podcast through Apple Podcasts or on Spotify. Watch this podcast on Instagram TV at PVN College or on our YouTube page, Pleasant Valley North. We love you guys, and we'll see you next time.